it's unfortunate because, you know, Keynes was basically completely wrong on just about everything. And so Bernanke is a student of the Great Depression, apparently, but if he was my student, I would have failed him. He didn't learn anything. I mean, unfortunately, the Great Depression was a result of government mistakes. You know, it was not that, you know, the conventional wisdom is that Hoover did nothing, and so we had the Depression. Hoover was the most interventionist president up until his time. He did not do nothing. He did everything he could to artificially stimulate the economy and bragged about it. His Secretary of the Treasury urged him to do nothing, and he ignored that advice, and he acted, and he got the Depression started. When Roosevelt came in, he took Hoover's policies and expanded them. And that's what made the Depression last so long. But if you go back to the Depression of 1920, which very few people know about, because we had one then. The initial decline in the stock market in 1920 was bigger than 1929. The contraction in GDP was bigger than 1929. But because the government did nothing, we were out of it very quickly. And the same mistakes are being made again. We had a bursting of an asset bubble. That real estate bubble dramatically distorted the U.S. economy. It's so out of whack right now because of that period. We were spending too much money, our service sector got too big, the goods production sector shrank, all of our resources are misallocated, too many people were working in finance, too many people were working in real estate, too many people working in retail, and not enough people were doing other things. And so capital and labor are not where they're supposed to be. They need to be reallocated. And the process of doing that is always painful, and it means there's going to be a recession. But if the market is allowed to do it, it'll do it quickly. It'll happen. It's not going to take forever. But the politicians never want that to happen. So they always want to act like they're doing something. And what they do just makes it worse. And that's exactly what we're doing now. We're preventing the market from righting the ship with more of the very same stimulus. You know, I hear this argument that, well, people aren't spending, so the government has to spend. The government has no money. The government only has money that it takes from the people. You know, and now they can print money, but when they print money, all they do is destroy the value of everybody else's money. They have nothing to bring to the table. Like if the government creates jobs, well, what jobs did they destroy in the process? Because they had to divert resources from one sector of the economy to the government. So they destroy efficient jobs and they create political jobs. And all this does is extend the process and lengthen it. And I think right now, given the fact that we are in worse shape than we were in 1929 structurally, and we have a much bigger government, and we don't have the discipline of a gold standard, I'm afraid that this time around we could end up with a real hyperinflation, which is going to be a much bigger disaster than just, you know, the depression we had in the 1920s. Because during the 1930s, the dollar gained purchasing power. You know, so that kind of eased the pain. In fact, you know, one of the things that Roosevelt was doing during the Depression was destroying livestock and plowing under fields because they wanted to keep the price of food from falling. And you think, gee, what a stupid thing to do. People are unemployed, and we're trying to drive up the price of food. But we're not going to be that lucky this time where food gets cheaper. Food's going to go through the roof. Food prices are going to go way up. So are energy prices. That's going to make this economic period much more devastating if we stay on this path. But in your first question on the credit default swaps, look, as I said before, people do stupid things when they're drunk on cheap money. And once everybody got conned into believing this real estate bubble, what happened with credit default swaps is people were writing insurance against something they thought could never happen. It was, well, how can Lehman Brothers ever default? Or how can any of these companies? And so nobody really questioned the counterparty risk because they were so, you know, caught up in the hysteria. But you have to remember that a lot of these underlying mortgages that created the problem never could have existed without the cheap money, without the Fed funds rate, without Alan Greenspan. The whole mortgage market was a function of teaser rates. Teaser rates were a gift of Alan Greenspan. And even, you know, when Fannie and Freddie were guaranteeing mortgages in 2004 and 2005 and 2006, they were putting government guarantees on mortgages even though they knew they would default because they were qualifying people solely based on their ability to make the teaser rate. Even though they knew that the resets exceeded their annual income, they approved them anyway. So all these things, the whole subprime mortgage market never could have been created if Alan Greenspan didn't breathe the life into it. And the whole concept of structured and securitized products wouldn't have gained traction without Freddie and Fannie. They're the ones that got it going. They provided the initial moral hazard. And who do you think was the biggest buyer of subprime mortgages in the whole world? Freddie and Fannie. That's why they went broke first. So, and if there was any entity that needed more regulation, it was Freddie and Fannie, and that's where they failed to regulate. But the reason they needed regulation is because they had a government guarantee. The minute you put the government guarantee on them, you removed all the market regulation, because now the market didn't care. Who cares if Fannie and Freddie go bust, because the government's going to bail us out. And that's the moral hazard that creates a problem. And we're doing the same thing now with these bailing out all these too big to fail firms. Goldman Sachs and JP Morgan and Morgan Stanley, these guys are making a fortune now with free money from the government because they know they can gamble all they want because it's heads they win, tails we lose. And capitalism doesn't work that way. You have to be allowed to fail. And if you can't fail, it's not going to work. And lenders have to be cognizant of risk. They have to understand if they make a bad loan and it doesn't work out, they lose money. Because if you don't have that, then capitalism doesn't work. You need fear and greed. And if you don't have any fear, then greed runs amok. And it's the government that takes the fear out of the equation and allows all this to happen. Yeah.
Economics aside, military timelines, healthcare, what are your views there?
Well, first of all, I think healthcare, again, is another economic issue. And it boils down to government interference. I mean, you know from economics that one of the beauty of capitalism is that it makes prices go down and quality go up. That's just how it works. And you can certainly see that, you know, in a lot of products. You can see it in cell phones or plasma TVs, or there are all kinds of products that every year they get more complicated, they can do more things, but the cost keeps going down. We see that all over the economy. In some cases, governments create a lot of inflation, so it's hard to see. But if you go back to the 19th century, you take about a 100-year period before the government was printing so much money, prices fell for 100 years. Prices were lower in 1900 for most products than they were in 1800. Now the question is, why is healthcare different? Or why is education different? Why are there some prices? Why do postage stamps keep going up when the price of a phone call keeps going down? And the answer is always, well, the government is there. The government is involved distorting the market. And that's what happens in healthcare. Healthcare prices and education prices are going through the roof because the government has interfered with market forces and doesn't let them operate. So if we want to solve the healthcare problem, we have to get government out of healthcare. And we've got to look at the ways that our tax code and all the things that we do from government, how that has impeded market forces and caused healthcare prices to go up when they should be coming down, or education prices to be going up. I think it's even clearer with education. Does it make any sense to anybody that a college education is more expensive than it was 10 years ago or 20 years ago, with all the computers and all the automation and the fact that more and more kids are in college? That the cost per pupil should be coming down because of economies of scale. Why isn't it? It's not because of all the government loans and all the government guaranteed loans, so that students, no one cares about the price. Whatever the price is, you can get the money from the government to bid it up. We have that same distortion in healthcare. We have, too many people are utilizing insurance to pay for all their medicine as opposed to paying for it themselves. Well, why is that? Well, because the government gives you a tax break. If you get insurance from your employer, there's no taxes. If he gives you the money, then you have to pay taxes on it. If we can separate insurance from employment and let the employees make a decision on how they want to spend their money, do they want to buy an expensive insurance policy, or do they want to just get a catastrophic plan and put the extra cash in their pocket? And if we did that, and if we got consumers more involved in the process, and if we reformed the medical malpractice or tort reform so that doctors weren't spending all their time doing defensive medicine and preparing to get sued, and if we put some kind of cap on these punitive damages, we can bring down malpractice rates. And if we opened up the insurance industry to competition, why is it that if you're in Connecticut, why can't you buy insurance from out of state? That's a government rule that's preventing that. And then not only that, you can't buy insurance from Japan. You can't buy insurance from a Swiss company. Why not? I can buy Swiss chocolates. I can buy a Japanese car. I'm not allowed to buy Japanese insurance. So what we need is competition. It's the government that's preventing this from happening. So we get the government out of healthcare, we get the government out of education, on a national level at least, we'll get better quality and we'll get lower price. As far as national defense, that's what the government's supposed to be focusing on. The problem is they're spending too much energy on all the things that are none of their business, that are not authorized by the Constitution. The one thing they're supposed to do, they can't even do it right. I think we spend too much on the military in general, but as a percentage of the budget, it should be much bigger. But I think, you know, they're making a lot of mistakes. I think we're involved in places where we shouldn't be involved. I think we have a tendency to go into a country and then it escalates and we're there and we never leave. We just keep getting bigger and bigger and bigger. We've got hundreds of bases around the world that have existed for, you know, since before the Second World War, during the Second World War. Why are they there? Why do we still have this troop level around the world? You know, I think you have all the same mistakes being made by the Pentagon that